here about those ionic alternators. They're only used in spacecraft. And in order for them to be able to make something like that, they'd have to be able to have a they have to be able to make a a definite change to a lot of different things, and in order they'd have to completely revamp the entire automotive industry, and it will once it's introduced, but it's going to be about 10 years, and and that's that. So before it's readily available as a car. So there are a lot of times when the ways that stuff goes, like situations and things like that, and I think was a lot of times when America invested a lot of money in what nations were available in the Afghanistan region and the Middle Eastern region of Europe. I found that there's a lot of different people who invest in certain things and certain stuff, and because of me watching the markets, not avidly, but every once in a while, I've seen a lot of different patterns in the way that things move. Wasn't wearing a helmet. There are a lot of times where I decided to try to be someone that I wasn't comfortable with being, and I realized I wasn't comfortable being that type of person. But it taught me a lot in the situations where there were a lot of things that I didn't usually think I would get into that I got into, and because of certain people that were good in certain areas of things, I was able to study, and I was able to realize that not only just reading comics and short stories and stuff like that from Stephen King, I realized that there were a lot of things that I missed, and there were a lot of things that I decided that to be able to study again, and since there were a lot of people that that I was late to the party with, or late to get there. There were a lot of things that I missed out on. There were a lot of people that I missed out on being friends with, and a lot of times I thought to myself that I wasn't gonna have friends that were there for me, and I really realized that though they're not here right now, it doesn't mean they won't be. And I realized a lot of times where I where situations that I went through, I realized that there were a lot of people that that I tried to become a part of, and there were a lot of groups that I tried to be able to make for myself. And I realized that all those groups were basically ideas in my head, and I was basically just trying to come up with some sort of possibility, I guess. And trying to figure out where the markets would lie and where I would be able to fix something for myself and make it to where I could there were a lot of times where I thought I'd be able to make something for myself. And when I started making something for myself, I realized that there were a lot of people out there that wanted me to do good. And there were a lot of people out there that would defend that. And even though I found that there were people out there that owned businesses that really did have my back, and I sort of let them down. Only in the sense that that I had other things in my life that were affecting me. I had other things, other situations where I thought that there was something helping me, when in a situation where I knew that something would just come about, and a situation where I knew that that I was gonna lose otherwise. So I decided to go down paths and avenues that weren't exactly healthy for me. And I made a few different experiences that and I made a few different experiences that were better for me. I realized a certain part of my anatomy and a certain part of my mind. What's the word? My mind, basically. The certain part of my anatomy was my mind. To basically pick apart situations very easily and figure out different possibilities. And the way that I was able to pick apart different situations, I became good at security. And there were a lot of people that recognized that and helped me along the way. They recognized that the situations that I went through and the situations that I had been through were better for me, I guess, to be able to pick apart a situation and realize its best result, or its best situational possibility. And that's basically how I just learned a new skill. And as I kept studying movements of people and doing different things, I realized that there were a lot of different applications that I would be okay with. And I realized that there were a lot of different situations that I had experienced that were, I'd say, out of the norm. And the more I acted like I knew all the things, the more I was revered, I guess. And I had to realize and I had to show people exactly the things that were my weak points, or exactly the things that were my weren't my strong suits. I noticed that there were a lot of times, or not really strong suits, but weren't my fortes, or my cup of tea, I guess, so to speak, in a metaphor, or a simile. There were so many times where I decided to be able, and I just ate macaroni, and not macaroni, I just ate, not macaroni, I just ate some broccoli and cheese. It's delicious. Put some Parmesan cheese on that thing. Some beer cheese sauce. It was delicious and yummy. But realizing that I wasn't exactly fit for the thing because of I wasn't exactly fit for security sometimes, so I just decided to go into hospitality. There were a lot of times where people tested me. Like there was a situation where I was working at a staff at a particular company, and And there decided to be this one kid that decided that he was going to mess with one of the security guards and then run away. I was working at the door, and they wanted me to, not they, but they asked me why. They wanted me, they didn't want me, but they asked me why I didn't stop him. I told him because I don't get paid to do that. I told him because if I got paid to do that stuff, then I would take those risks. Usually when a person is supposed to stop another person, they have to have at least $100,000 peace bond on them, or not just a peace bond, but an insurance bond to make sure that if bodily injury happens, then they're covered.
Sweet Jesus.
And that's the reason why I don't do that, because he basically ran down the block and got chased down by one of the security guards, and that's what happened. And he stopped and stayed, and that's the reason why sometimes I don't act and don't say things, because there are a lot of people's thanks that help, but they're not going to be paying my bills. I don't always think that there's something that I have to be able to do something, or that I blame someone for not being able to pay me, because no, I don't. But there are things and stuff that I certainly do stay out of because of it, like anyone's private life or something like that. I don't work for the CIA, the FBI, or the NSA, or anything like that. So I work for myself, and I try to work for myself. I'm trying to come up with new ideas and different things like that. So I'm getting out these old things that I used to do, and seeing if I can't come up with some more ideas about myself, and be able to go off of those, because I realized that I had a certain situation in my what's the word, experience. I realized that as I was
Whenever you're ready.
nice. I realized that as a certain situation was going on in my life, I didn't have all the situations, or all the reflexes, or all the different types of things to give the people a good look about security. There was another situation that happened that I was working as a security guard, literally a security guard, and people didn't realize this guy was trying to take $20 out of the till. But of course, there are people that got fired because of it, and they let go because they opened their till and then walked away from it. They were situationally an employee, and decidedly so, they left their till open, and that's the reason why those things happened. So whenever there are certain situations that happen and certain people because of it, there are certain reasons why I don't act and I don't do situations, because of a situation called liability. These are the reasons why people get let go of at certain places, and these are the reasons why people say they're going to build their career and let people know things and stuff like that, and then they don't. They don't let people know anything. They keep quiet about everything and think that it's funny at sometimes. And that guy got freaking marauded, and he got ambushed by these dudes who were just way too strong. They were literally taking him out like literally what's the word? It's like those. You ever seen those demons from Constantine? Man, they're just like, they're flock and they go in one direction, no matter how many people change direction. It's because of their terminal velocity and their drifting capability. It's like that's the reason why, that's the science behind something that's moving forward behind you can push you literally and break the wind to make you, even though you're not flying or even though you're not going. And that's the physics behind all those little demon things. And that's what it looked like to me. And certainly that guy who I figured was homeless, so there was no need to actually go there and do any of that stuff. because of the fact that he had such weird garbs. He basically had a white shirt that was pretty tattered and dumb, and whenever they were done bringing him to outside to a certain area where they all rested because they were all out of breath, he didn't decide to run. So I knew that for a fact he was definitely whatchamacallit, either A, hired by the bartender to be able to make sure that someone lost their job, B, brought on by someone who was are told to steal things by one of the managers because the manager didn't know whether or not somebody was trustworthy or work forcible. C, he was just a guy passing by and thought that he could get into a club and thought that he'd snike something and then come back to the bar later and spend it. Or D, he was just a man that acted alone and he was probably going to use it for food and or drugs. Because that's a lot of times what people go back to whenever they're depressed about something. Drugs being anything ranging from alcohol to a lot of different things. So, there are a lot of different reasons why people have informed me of these things, and I'm really good at picking apart situations and realizing whether or not a dude running away with a $20 bill, or a dude thinking that he can steal 100, or a dude thinking that he can even steal 1,000. Notice that whatever they lose, however they lose it, they could have brought that out on their insurance money. That's usually the reasons why people lose their jobs, though, in any situation, because they may have picked apart the situation completely and utterly, but I'm the one who saw the dude walk up. I didn't do anything or say anything because I thought that the bartender himself wouldn't be stupid enough to leave his goddamn drawer open. If someone is stupid enough to leave something open, then they don't deserve that job. Every situation could have led to a certain situation and a certain person being able to do something. Being able to realize something, being able to know something, being able to get that $20 bill that was in the register. So realize, when a situation happens, that's the reason why bartenders usually choose not to drink. And also the reason why sometimes people don't understand that there are a lot of different reasons why people do things, because they don't like the certain person, or they're trying to hit on a certain person, or someone left that open to make sure that there weren't any bad people around and no one would do anything, because that's the reason why bartenders sometimes suck, because they test their security. Instead of being sometimes the person that they actually need to be and sort of the person that they actually want to be. Hold on one second. back again to this situation that I was at. For any potential listeners at all. So, the situation happened, and I saw all the key moments of what they were doing and how they were doing it. And because of the fact that there was a reason why it happened, and there were a lot of people who were on, not the security team, but on the bartending staff that literally sometimes didn't even have their licenses. In this particular situation, this person, whether they got their license or not, don't realize that the license is very crucial to being able to make sure that you can have a reflex. Because sometimes when you have to go to that class, you create a reflex that, I got the license now, I'm going to get this now. So, the confidence itself of having a license and being able to make sure that you can be a bartender pretty much anywhere in New Orleans gives you the confidence that you can work and get yourself a certain thing. Whether that man was going through a certain depression of some kind or a certain clairvoyant moment. Usually a clairvoyant moment is just you realizing some sort of personal justice or a personal thing that whether that person really had a license or didn't have a license is beside the point. But the realization of fact, if he didn't have his license, is probably the fact that he shouldn't have been working behind that counter in the first place. These are the reasons why. The license isn't just to be able to create the ideal of you being responsible. The license itself is a saying. It says, I'm responsible enough to be able to keep up with this every single other year. I'm responsible enough to be able to take care of this every single time that I go out, and I'm able to be able to take care of myself and take care of the things that I need to take care of. Unfortunately, that is the reason why it happened. That is the reason why it happened, because there are people that decide that there's not a responsible person, or they don't like someone, or don't think about someone, or find that they hug someone because they don't have a shot, or they think that somehow a woman holding onto a man by his shoulders is a and there is no there are women that were hot there, yeah, definitely, they were all beautiful and attractive, but there is no way in whatever way that I would ever try to do that to a person unless they agreed to it first. And that's the definition of sexual harassment. So realize in certain situations that happen, there are people out there that decide your fate, whether it be some sort of different thing, and there's the reason why managers exist. Managers exist because they decide your fate every single day. They decide what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and the way you're going to do it, and they pretty much know the situation that happens because of the people that have come before you. I had coffee earlier today. Yes, it is delicious. And I didn't have just coffee. I had white chocolate Starbucks coffee. It is my absolute favorite. So Starbucks is delicious. This is not an ad read. Once again, I do not have a sponsor. I am just saying products that I like because I like them. And I know that eventually I'll probably be some sort of personality at some point. Hopefully a company picks me up at some point. So that'll be great. That would be great. But these are the things and the situations that happen because of people's irresponsibility from certain details. And that's why I know that I'm good at security and I'm good at picking apart situations and knowing what people's intentions are by sometimes just their body movements. And that's the reason why I don't force or project any sort of thoughts onto them. I try to see exactly what they're trying to do, exactly the way they're trying to do it, no matter what their first action or second action is. Because their first action could be a step toward you. Their second action could be a step to the side. Their third action could be a punch to the face. Or it could be a number of other things, like a handout, or giving you $1, or anything like that. Realize that there are certain situations that people go through. There are a lot of different situations that people understand. But because of their experience sometimes, they don't realize history. They take their experience and don't realize the situations that have happened beforehand, and that's the reason why things get out of control. When things get out of control, people have expectations. When they have expectations, those expectations decide to, those expectations can decide for you because of emotion. That reflexive emotion can make you hand gesture or do anything you want to, or do a dumb stuff that involves people who think that there are certain things that they do that makes any sense. And yes, I'm doing hand gestures right now, but if I had a camera, I'd probably be able to tell someone. Or know, or people would understand where I'm actually coming from on the subject. And because of these certain situations that I've experienced, I've been able to pick apart and study every single thing, every single situation, and make sure that that situation itself isn't always the thing that people realize. To realize that there are certain situations that stem from that situation that caused that situation to actually happen. And then that situation happened. It could be like someone not realizing that their house is on a slant. So like someone not realizing that their entire estate is on a mountain, and that mountain is destined to have a landslide. Or and even though it's destined to have a landslide, it's merely because of the architecture sometimes of the mountain. Because there it's called architecture because nature makes it sometimes. And nature is definitely the architect sometimes because of there's certain things that gain weight on certain things. And it's the reason why sometimes I'm very weary of staying up in mountains. It's the reason why I get nervous in heights. Because I'm afraid sometimes that there are things and people sometimes that are either A, up to no good, B, the situation's up to no good, or the situation was not planned, but the situation was suggested by someone who had less than nice intentions. Knowing somehow by paying attention to certain different things, there are geological things that you can go to and realize that at a certain period of seasons, the geometrical scale, or the seismic vibration of something is less because of its pull on something, and the fact that it's, god dang it, I'm messing up. God dang it. Okay, I gotta get the motorcycle. Or just push the motorcycle out. Here we go. Hold on. Let's see. Wait. I'm gonna jump. How do I do this? Alright, I'll be able to do it. Let's take this wheel out. Alright, doing another cheat. There are a lot of different reasons why people themselves try to survive in a certain situation, or try to make sure that a certain situation happens a certain way. And people themselves leave different clues behind of what they actually did, and the reason for the responsibility of a certain person that it happened to. So, as you look back, and as you look back on a situation, you'll find that there are situations that people try to manipulate because of risk of involvement, and within those risks of involvement, or not risk of involvement, but risk of involvement of information. And when they involve that information, that changes the situation, and not only does it make them see a different possibility because of their experience and history beforehand, but it makes them afraid, and that's the reason why it comes into play that they're afraid of their own authority sometimes. They're afraid of their own job sometimes, because and in security I was very afraid of my own job sometimes, and that's the reason why certain things happened the way they did. People got very, very angry with me sometimes, and they realized that I myself wasn't that experienced in just being able to do something. But understandably so, I'm experienced now, and I realized that certain situations led to my experience, and at certain situations I studied to the T, and to very hardcore like. I just wasn't cut out for front door guy. So but as I'm realizing certain situations and knowing the fact that I'm not the greatest at security, because I don't boast or say anything about security all the time. Like, so, I mean, and also too, I mean, that also makes for not being great at other things sometimes. Because I'm constantly thinking about other things and thinking about different thoughts that lead to certain situations, and I'm constantly thinking about the situation at hand. And because I drink coffee, I'm really talking a lot faster. But it's okay. I can calm myself down pretty easily. But and also I have a deeper voice right now because I smoked cigarettes before I started playing. But there are a lot of reasons why people themselves tend to learn something about themselves in a certain situation, and they start to realize that the situations that they thought were gonna happen, or that were gonna be, are changed, and forever changed sometimes. And people think that there is something that they need to live by, or be a part of, in order to be able to live a little bit longer. And what they'd have to understand is that kind of stuff is not a fallacy, but it's something you create in your own mind. It's not a complete fallacy, and there's not a certain situation that could stop you from ever having that possibility as a fact. But there are certain things that people have to go through in order for those possibilities to be something that happens. In order to be able to, oh my god, I want that car. Gimme, 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 yeah! Cool. Certain situations happen because of things, and yes, I do that on purpose sometimes. I know it sounds like I have ADD, but I don't, because I really don't, and only because I know that I like to change subject really quickly, and because I like to get stuff out before not people notice or people know anything, but it's like I like to get my stuff out in the same tone of voice, because I don't want to insinuate anything that's not a part of the situation. And when I do, I realize that there are certain things that I know, and when I know these certain things, I know that there's a certain situation that I need to be a part of in order to be able to be the best person that I can be, to be able to see this a situation through. And whenever I'm actually done with a certain situation or a certain thing, I realize that there are a lot of different possibilities that I decided to what's the word? There are a lot of different possibilities that I decided to let go of because of the certain situations that I was in. Like, I could have been drawing that entire time and getting myself together instead of trying to get a job all the time. And before I realized that there were a lot of situations that I was a part of that were pretty hard. Like, there was a girl that was laying down on a speaker, and she started having a seizure, and because of that seizure, I started to realize some sort of grandeur, and realized that I knew what to do in a situation because I'd seen my dad perform CPR before. Maybe when I was a baby, or maybe it was instilled or something like that, but I realized I knew how to perform CPR, and she was breathing. I knew she was breathing, so because I could see the realized it's like you can't really find, it's hard when a person's having a seizure, because whenever a person is breathing and they're breathing normally, or if they're breathing hardcore, like if they're breathing like like that, it doesn't matter, like, because of them taking breath and letting out breath so quickly, they don't usually make a mark on a mirror. So that's the reason why I didn't carry one at the time. And there are a lot of different situations where and she was definitely having not an epileptic seizure, but that's the reason why sometimes people actually get epileptic, is because they take certain drugs. And epilepsy is not always genetic. It may have to do with a chemical dopamine that happens in certain times of people's lives. That is the thing that stops them or makes them go. The things that help them. Like, I'd say, like, kids that have parents that smoke weed sometimes, might actually build up a resistance and start making it their own synthetic THC to calm down dopamines in their body. It's the reason why you see kids that are always always really calm or something like that, or really just they're either really inside themselves or they're really calm, and that's the reason why I think that that's kind of a bad thing sometimes, because in certain situations they won't say the right words or they won't say the right things to get people out of their freaking act, or get people out of their not act out of the situation that calls for them to be confident, and also in not panic, but in more of a what's the word, not elated, it calls for them to be a little bit more about themselves in the situation and be able to be confident and make sure that they can act appropriately in the situation sometimes. And there are a lot of people that don't know that sometimes. That's sometimes the reason why I think that I yell, I guess, because I get this feeling that there's an emergency sometimes. I get this feeling that there's something going on that I'm not being a part of, and not totally not being a part of, but not completely seeing that there's a situation where I can try to be more a more confident person. Realizing that there are a lot of different confidence issues between kids and stuff, and people who try to connect themselves to certain people, and not using any sort of occult stuff or trying to believe in something that's superstitious, but trying to suggest something where a person will be or how a person will be there, and then saying to that person that they will be there in a certain situation, not knowing that there is a and I need to change my car because I want to bring this back to the garage. But I'm not going to. I'm gonna jump stuff and ruin it.
You want to end up in the trunk of this thing?
And also it's got a weird swoop on it. No, it's not really my style. So yeah, I'm not like I'm like a Tokyo drifter or anything like that.
Lucky miss.
So there are certain situations that I go through as a person, and in those certain situations I pick apart and try to build on something. And not to say that I've never had help with anything, because there are a lot of people out there that have believed in me and known that I'd be able to make it on my own, and I'd be able to do a lot of things. And having those people's faith, it means a lot to me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm gonna fail or win. You know, it just means that I'm a little bit readier than I was before, or a little bit more prepared than I was before, because readier is not a word. There are situations out there that people go to sometimes, and there are certain situations and people that think that they can focus on one thing. The reason why, and the reason being why certain people have these reflexes sometimes, that they believe certain things are happening, and those things will calm them down. That they don't understand that as soon as they understand a certain situation, or they understand what a certain situation is happening because of, that situation changes to an elated mode because of the satisfaction and the sense of satisfaction or reflex that they usually have from either their parents or their friends, or an instilled reflex that happens from either any sort of trauma or any sort of thing. So whenever people start to, what's the word, get really excited about stuff, it's only because of certain things that they have realized before, and also having to do with the way that people, I guess, what's the word, the people form fit themselves with their emotions sometimes. They try to find out a certain palette of different emotions, and don't realize that as that palette comes, as that realization comes, they're starting to realize that that certain situations were not the way that they thought that they were, or the way that they saw they were. And also realizing that there can be group hallucinations where people see different things and know different things, where not something that's happened in the past, but something that they've believed in, or something that they've noticed, and through taking within themselves certain minerals and vitamins, there are things that people can see that are literally just not there. There are certain times where I've believed in something completely and utterly false, and I realized that that thing that was false, and that thing that was completely false, was the fact that I believed in something that was myself. I believed in something that I knew for a fact to be true. So as I believed in that certain superficial fact, I started to make a hypothesis about what I saw in my life. And this was in my younger years. I saw a hypothesis, and then realized that that hypothesis was something that I had never ever experienced before. And when I experienced that one thing, or when I experienced that thing that was there, I realized that that situation that I was experiencing wasn't the situation that I ever thought it was. Wasn't the situation that I ever knew it was, and wasn't the situation that I ever even noticed. There are a lot of people that can do things. A lot of kids can get hypnotized very easily by things that are shiny or bright sometimes, and within those things, they start to try to change their hypothesis because they're seeing something extraordinary. And as they start to build and move in certain situations, they start to try to come up with some sort of positive thing. And I think that what they really think about sometimes is, I think kids think that if they go through a bad experience, then that thing will be censored by someone, or that thing will be unused in a certain area, or something like that. I think that that's the situation that they're actually going through, because they're not making much sense. They're not making much sense at all whatsoever. And the people are trying to understand why they're not trying to make sense. Because I've noticed a lot of different things that people are saying, and I've noticed a lot of different things that what they're trying to say is certain situations have led to a certain thing, and through their own volition, or their own what's the word, their own stereotypical ignorance, that through a certain number of situations something should be banned because of its use as evil. So tell me this. Someone uses a screwdriver to stab someone in the leg. Does that certain screwdriver get completely banned from use because it was able to break the skin? Or does that certain screwdriver get readily made so other people can defend themselves from the other screwdriver? I don't think either one of those things happens. And notice I didn't what's the word? Specify any kind of screwdriver, because I'm not trying to insinuate a crime has ever happened. not a crime of actual things, or that a person went absolutely insane because of his lack of help and different things, and lack of family support, and usually things like that happen because that's where those things lie. That's where those things are sometimes. It's where those people decide that they're going to let go of because they don't see any future on their own, or they don't see any future in anything, or maybe them just realizing a possibility and trying to come up with a certain image in their mind and not being able to. Realizing that certain image itself is something that they long for and yearn for, something that can make them feel confident sometimes, something that no one else realizes, and something that helps them believe in themselves. So as you start to realize that there are people out there that do bad things and say bad things to do bad things, realize that there are also people out there that are responsible enough to be able to know the difference between what their violence is and what their things are. And if people don't know the information that a kid is trying to make fun of or hurt someone, then that's the reason why it doesn't. That's the reason why nothing happens when a kid tries to take a gun and hurt someone. The realization of fact that someone themselves decided that they were going to take something out, or do something stupid, or say something idiotic to someone, what they don't realize is that they're not building on anything. They're not trying to say anything better. The people themselves are trying to keep everything inside of themselves sometimes. Because if they knew that if there was someone out there to help them, then they believe that person would have shown up already. And that's their only excuse sometimes. To be able and try to be able to do something stupid and dumb. And those people themselves think it's funny to be able to hurt themselves or other people. And that in itself is definitely and always will be a mental disability. There are kids out there that believe in themselves forever. And as soon as they start hurting themselves or start hurting something, they don't believe in themselves anymore because they're just that sometimes hardcore in the head. And because of something that ever happened to them, or some trauma that has ever happened, they decide not to do something for a very long time. And though they're able to come up with some sort of notion of fact, they have to literally keep removing a reflex that kept covering up something else. And that's the reason, and the minor fact of that actually being a thing, or that being a possibility, that's what literally is sometimes Down syndrome. And it sometimes ingrains into their genetic code and causes their face to droop sometimes. Realization of thought to be able to separate one part of your mind from another, because it's just a huge mass. It's not a huge mass, but it's just a big mass. It's pretty big, but it's not that big. But it's just a piece or part of your body that is able to create certain situations. And if that kid probably would have been taking the proper medication and would have been on medication at all, he most likely wouldn't have done that. And if he had been getting this proper support of people that tell him to take his medication and not yell it or scream it at him, then he most likely wouldn't have taken that choice. Realize that there are people out there that have disabilities, and those disabilities include causing violence to others and thinking that certain acts of violence against either animals or themselves are different. And they think that that difference is what makes them unique or helpful in any way. And there is no instance where anyone has ever used someone like that in any case at all. And if they have, then they've been shunned and disavowed by anyone. And that's what disavowing means. It's like if people do something that's terrible and stupid during a mission that they think that that is completely and utterly Completely and utterly comparable to if something goes wrong, if anything goes wrong, then it's a terrorist act. Realize this. Realize this very, very important, very pertinent fact. That the more you push a situation, the more you push someone's buttons, the more you tell them that they're not something that they need to be. Realize that that certain situation can only get out of control if that person has some sort of disability that they're not sharing with people. The realization of the reason why that kid went to the hospital first is to screen him for any sort of disability or any sort of trauma that happened to his head, or any sort of thing that he ache or body ache that he was feeling because of something that he went through or some sort of reflex that he made on his own. Those are the reasons why people go to the hospital sometimes, and kids go to the hospitals a lot more. Because if he was actually a terrorist, or actually someone that cared about something, I really do believe that it came from trauma. I really believe that it came from trauma. Because the fact of the matter is, why would they bring that kid to the hospital in the first place? And why would they be able to bring that kid to the hospital without him kicking and screaming? God. Yeah. There are a lot of things I realize because of the things that I see sometimes. The realization of the fact that there are cameras themselves on certain police cars, and the realization of the fact that if something happens, or if something ever did happen after that fact, then it would have been an act of terrorism. And it's a good thing that the realization of the fact that ISIS says they have control, but has no control. And any gang member from any Middle Eastern country, from any sort of person that throws bombs in certain directions, can realize this fact. That the only reason why that kid ever even thought about doing anything like that is because of it happening. It's because of things happening that were around him. And he thought he probably had to defend himself. That kid, I bet that kid has a disability. And if anyone made fun of him for it, then he probably kept it quiet afterwards. Probably kept it completely quiet from anyone. From even sometimes his parents, and decided probably not to get tested. And that's the real point that needs to be made. Before any law of guns or any things that needs to be controlled at all to be able to happen, people have to have control themselves. Because they have to realize that they are part of the equation of their own lives. They're part of the equation that makes up themselves. The huge DNA strand that is whatever connected to how many ever different cells that makes you who you are. But also realize the fact that there are people out there that decide people's futures all the time, and no matter if they're right or not, sometimes they're using it for self. I just want to know sometimes. But there are things that I figure out because of people and things that I see. I just use what I can see to see what I can't. And people understand that there are certain situations that happen. If you can break apart a certain crime scene, then you have a talent. If you can pick apart what happened and how it happened, then y'all have a talent. And that shouldn't be law. Something. If y'all are really that good at being able to pick apart certain situations, y'all are highly sought after as kids. And that's the reason why people are paying attention to you. Because there were that little of a kid with an AR-15. So realize y'all are highly sought after. And if you put yourself in the spotlight right now, then you'll pick the first contract and get paid so little. And that's the reason why you shouldn't take the first contract. Because the first contract always wants to pay you the lesser amount, because they're the first ones to ever see you, talk about you, or they're the first ones to ever notice you, but they were noticing you so much that they didn't have a business plan. Or if they're a big corporation, they'll keep you on the lower levels and then try to train you like you're a regular employee because they want to save money. Don't take the first contract, kids. Realize that if the first contract is military, you're going in at the ground level always. Go to college. Pick yourself a career. And if you go to the military then, you'll get paid a salary. It's freaking awesome. Boot camp is terrible. But also realize that you'll go through some sort of boot camp as you're doing things too. And they'll train you constantly. They might not have exactly as much respect for you as you go in, but if you prove yourself, then you'll be able to do whatever you want. And realize that there are so many different careers out there. And if you really want to go into a mental health sort of thing, then you have to start making some sense. Because I literally saw that commercial for y'all's, for whatever kids they were talking to, and it made no sense whatsoever. It made literally no sense. Kids were just saying different things that they thought was pertinent to the situation. And if they listened to any one of those people at the news place, then they were probably trying to protect him too. But understandably so, there are a whole bunch more people that want y'all as their people. When you get old enough to be able to do that stuff. Not, don't protest now, because if you protest now and a kid gets hurt, it's called instigation of fact. In court of law, it's called instigation of fact. Okay? It's called insinuating that something is some way because of something that happened in some way, shape, or form. Realization that that fact itself is rendered moot whenever you decide to instigate something in some sort of fight, in some sort of area, in some sort of arena, in some sort of thing. Realize that fact. Realize that thing. Okay? That if you try to insinuate that something is going to happen and that something hasn't happened yet, and you don't have proof to be able to prove that, then that's the reason why y'all are not still kids, but still ignorant to the situation. The realization of fact that people are the way they are for a reason, and the realization of a whole bunch of different things, that people are sometimes full of disabilities sometimes, or full of certain reflexes that they don't know anything about because of the fact that they only got a certain gene from one parent who may have taken acid or certain different drugs that made them think that they were the best person, or gave them a clear head at the time because they mixed it with aspirin. Because that's what aspirin does. It just gives you a clear head. That's all it does. It reduces all your muscle movements and things like that. That's the reason why you feel sometimes you're stopped up, but you don't realize sometimes that you need to get that snot out of your nose. Because if you don't, then you'll have fluids inside of your body. And those fluids sometimes can make bubbles. And those bubbles can make aneurysms. And those aneurysms can do a lot of things. But, understandably so, that's not always what's going to happen. That's not always what's going to be. Okay? Realize that technology itself is very, very advanced right now. We are in the future. We are a part of the future. We are not the future. We are experiencing the future every day, and it is getting better and better and better. All the time. Realize that there are people out there that really, really do want to help and want to make a better day. Because some of those people studied psychology before they went into news. Because they wanted to realize whether kids were doing the right thing or not. And if they were, then sometimes they suggest things that insinuate that kids are doing something. Kids are saying something. And they're irresponsible. But that beside the point. Realize that they have a talent to pick apart a situation and actually get out of a certain situation before it ever happens. And that kid wound up alive. And I'm sure, and I'm absolutely sure that that kid has a disability. I'm absolutely sure of it. But understandably so, even if I'm sure, it doesn't actually make it true. That kid could just been feeling something that he took a long time ago that stayed dormant in his system. Because that's what certain drugs can do. And that's the reason why they're so dangerous sometimes. Because it can make you feel an ache, but it can make you feel and a certain reflex later on in your life. Like, certain people can think that, and I tried the drugs because I thought they were going to make me into something that I thought was, or experience that I thought was great or awesome. So it's there, but I don't anymore. And because I realized how immature it was, and I realized that it wasn't good for my teeth. So realize that. And also realize the fact that there are people out there that care a lot about what you want, a lot about who you are. And also realize that there are people out there that don't know that they have talent, and the people out there that try to keep him down sometimes. There are people out there that try to keep you down, but don't worry, because those people already did their things, and they're using negative reinforcement, usually using negative reinforcement for you to say, no, I'm going to push away from you and make something on my own. Good. Make something on your own. It's good, because they did already. They don't have to constantly tell you everything, or tell you the responsibilities that you need to have in order to become a functioning adult. But also realize that that functioning adult cannot do things like, just because a certain magazine was used, they can ban it. I don't think they can ban it. They can't ban it. They can't ban it completely, and I know that. But notice that I'm not a gun supporter all the time. There are certain situations that need advisement, and people need to understand that I'm not. I'm completely independent. I really am. And I noticed that there are a lot of people that think that there's a bunch of different stuff in politics that's sarcastic, but they only are making mockery of this court sometimes, of this Congress that tells itself that it's a republic and doesn't pay attention to everyone, and assumes sometimes that people are communists out of merely a background check because they went to Russia one time, because they wanted to experience how fucking cold it was. They saw how cold it was, they left, and then they stopped. Stopped going there because they realized how cold it was, and it's still cold there. So, also understand that there's a lot of different people out there that really, really want to help. And they want to help because they have different opinions, and they want to be able to represent what the Republic actually stands for, what our idea of freedom actually stands for. And I may have different opinions and certain ideas, but I will not be a party to talking about people behind their back, or saying that there's things that are available to someone. And I have talked about people behind their back before, but only usually to myself. And that's usually the reason why I talk to myself sometimes, because I don't trust anyone else with the information. So realize there are a lot of different people out there that help, and they aren't just Republicans or Democrats or liberals or conservatives. Liberal and conservative is a word based on something, a system that people used in a time of terrorism. In a time where terrorists were everywhere. The reason why? Because there was a majority vote of people who were left-wing or right-wing. Notice that there is a left-wing to, what's the word? It's not just an insinuation. It's a thing that should put you at ease, okay? It's a metaphor, because just because it has a right wing and a left wing, it also has a judicial wing, an executive wing, and those people are made up of all different sorts. Just because there's a majority vote on something doesn't mean it's always going to go through. So realize that, and also realize the fact that the system works, and it always works because people work and people do things, and people have been doing things for a very long time. And I drank a 16-ounce thing of coffee here. It was really delicious. White chocolate. It was awesome. So there are a lot of things that I like to say because of the specific situations I used to go through as a kid, and the things that I say now aren't a part of my disability or anything like that, but I'm slowly and but surely trying to be able to come out of that and realize that there is going to be a change in my life. And because of that change, there are a lot of people out there that are going to be able to help me with the situation. And I'm going to be able to start helping myself and realize that eventually I won't have to take that medication. So realize that and notice that there are a lot of people out there that really want to help. And I'm finally thinking a little bit clearer sometimes. I'm really, really helping myself, and I really, really am thinking that this stuff is helping me. And no matter what, this is therapy for me. So I help myself, and hopefully it helps others. Realize you are your own one-man bomb squad. One-man metaphorical, personally, and definitely. Realize that you can help people, make situations, and do a lot of different good to help people get themselves back together. And realize that just because you're together doesn't mean you're always ready. Realize that just because you have yourself doesn't mean that other people want you. Doesn't mean that other people need you. But it means that people can try if you let them give you the chance. Or if they allow it at all. Realize that, kids, or anybody that decides that they're going to try to change the law about something. And notice that the military uses those things sometimes. Those extended mags, whenever they're on excursions and stuff like that. And if there are less companies that make them, sometimes, then there are people themselves that are going to have to go to a certain amount of people that will corner a market. And if kids are just trying to corner a market, then it's stupid and they're dumb. But if they're not, then realize what you could do inadvertently because of something someone said to you. So suggest to yourself that you should do things for a better day, and realize the fact that there are people out there that are doing good sometimes and taking care of literally rapists, child molesters, and assholes who try to blow buildings up constantly because they're idiots and they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Realize that, and also realize that the NRA does a lot of good, even though sometimes it stands against the government sometimes. But a lot of people stand against the government, and there are plenty of places that stand against the government on trying to be able to realize that there are certain situations that the government cannot approve of or deny. Be yourselves, and realize that there are people out there that care. And as long as there are people out there that care, then there's someone out there that has your back, that knows what you're going through, and knows and realizes that there are certain situations that should have happened before any of that stuff happened at all. And there are a lot of people that were disappointed in themselves and the system because of it. And there will be all the time, because they will see that disappointment and they will pick it apart like every single professional ever does. So realize that you're wanted, you're literally sought after, kids. And the more you say, the more you make yourselves look like idiots, and the less you'll probably get paid. So realize it, and realize that there are certain situations that I find funny that make me look like an idiot too. So, and whether or not that makes any sense in that certain context, or whether or not that makes sense at all in that certain context, realize that there are people out there that care. And you shouldn't be quiet. If you see something, say something. And if someone's trying to manipulate you or tell you something that's false, don't yell and scream like revolution or something like that. Realize that there are people out there that care, and just go somewhere else. Walk away and find a better day. Sometimes. Thank you for listening, if you ever do. And I am Joe Bomb Squad 87.